Hi, everybody. A very good afternoon. I always feel like I'm about to break out into a song. Hi, I cannot see you, but I hope you can see us clearly. My name is Jean, and I'm the co-founder of Superhero Me. It's an inclusive arts movement for kids. I also work at the Lien Foundation in early childhood development. And I think most importantly, while working with children, became friends with Bob, Hui, Mei Lan, and slowly became friends with the autistic kids we work with. And I'm also a befriender to a youth with autism. So I think when we started working on this project, a big aim that we wanted to have was how can people like you and me who are not parents, who don't work in special education, actually be really way more involved in this journey towards an inclusive society. So I think we're really excited to have our very esteemed panel who look super serious because of the distance, take time off work today to really share a bit more about their thoughts behind this. Quick introduction. So we have Jacelyn from Autism Resource Center. Jacelyn's the Executive Director at ARC. Give her a round of applause. A charity organization that provides a wide range of services for individuals on the autism spectrum. She spearheaded the Employability and Employment Center program, which trains and supports many young adults on the spectrum, and also heads up the charity social enterprises, the art faculty, and Professor Braun Cafe. So Jacelyn, thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Bernard. Bernard's the CEO of St. Andrew's Autism Center. Give him a round of applause. He spent the last 20 years in the field of education with his last role as Director of Special Education at MOE. So he's also a father of a 17-year-old with autism and intellectual disability and a 14-year-old with dyslexia. Thanks, Bernard, for joining us. Third up, we have Zooey, who's the Executive Director at Rainbow Center. Round of applause. She started her career as a social worker in community mental health care and subsequently in disability. So she believes that change can really happen when people can draw on their own strengths to realize their potential in life. And last but not least, we have Mei Lan. Round of applause for Mei Lan. Mei Lan wanted me to emphasize she is a parent first, not parent advocate. So yes, Mei Lan is a mom to 3 teenagers, including a son with autism, who pushes for accessibility and acceptance through her Facebook groups, Friends of ASD Families, and Reunite Missing Children. So while she finds fulfillment in rallying fellow caregivers, one thing that she's really passionate about is to bridge the mainstream world with the special needs community. So here we are today. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to flow down the table, like literally, starting with Jacelyn. I guess, many people associate a meaningful life as an adult with work, right? And, employment came up as one of high priority areas in the recent Autism Enabling Master Plan. Maybe Jacelyn, can you share a bit with us about, in the area of job support, what are the common misconceptions when you talk about hiring autistic people and what must change?
Okay, I think in the last 5 years or so, I think the landscape has changed quite a bit. There are many more employers who are more forthcoming and supportive in hiring people on the spectrum. There are actually many willing and kind employers, but actually many do not know what the strength of people with autism. They also might not know how to support them. So that's the challenge that potential employers face. But we need to see that autism is actually a spectrum. There is high IQ, there's low IQ, high support needs, and low support needs. But the important thing is to recognize that everyone do have strength, and the right job match is often the start to a successful placement. We also see that actually employment work is actually dignity. Dignity, just like for you and me, is dignity and improves the quality of life. But we also recognize that not everyone may be suitable to work for pay. And so in the Autism Enabling Master Plan that ARC has recently published, together with the support of the Autism Network Singapore, we have also, one of the recommendations is to develop a continuum of work models for people who might not be able to work for pay. Yeah. So on one side is the demand. We're hoping that more employers would hire people on the autism spectrum, but there is also a need to prepare the supply side to ensure that individuals on the spectrum are also more job ready with all the job soft skills. As just now, Bob, we've heard him say that how he trained his son doing a lot of housework, doing routine work. It's more than just life skill. What he's building is work habits in his son that would be very useful for placement in jobs later. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe just moving on to Bernard very quickly. That was very succinct, Jason. Good job. Good on timing here. And because I know you guys have many questions that are kind of flooding in. Bernard, actually, the average Singaporean might not be so familiar with the idea of DACs, Day Activity Centres. And for St. Andrews, you guys are running the first such home for autistic adults, right? Could you maybe share a bit about what roles do they play in supporting families? And what can people out here, I know most of you guys are from community partners, actually do to support this work?
Sure, Jean. Indeed, many Singaporeans don't know about the activity centres and adult disability homes. They are a very important part of the overall landscape in the adult disability services. While we really would like for everyone with autism who can work to be able to access work, the reality is that not every one of them is going to be able to work. And so we need to support those who can work with as many options as possible. But equally importantly, I think we need to continue to engage and ensure that those who cannot work do have a meaningful life. So what are day activity centres? Essentially, they are centres that provide care, engagement, and continued training for adults with autism post-SPED school. And actually, there are actually many DACs in Singapore, but they are not big. And they're not big because generally the centres are kept small because of certain challenges that we have. But the whole point of DACs is really to give those that go to the DACs daily a sense of belonging, a sense of a daily life that engages them. So at our DACs, for example, we not only provide that daily engagement, we want to continue to train them with their daily living skills, with a little bit of pre-vocational skills as well. And even if they cannot undertake work that leads to regular pay, we want to give them that dignity of work. So simple things like urban farming and different activities that can give them a sense of meaning and a sense of contribution back to society. And of course, we also want to give them options for recreation, things that continue to give them a certain quality of life. And I think most importantly for DACs, without that DAC service, often what you will find is that you saw the story just now of one of the adults with autism who was kept home for many years. And the reality is that when they are kept home for many years, the skills that they have learned in the years in SPED school do regress. And that's something that we want to prevent, that's something that we want to keep from happening. Adult disability homes are homes that are essentially residential facilities providing 24/7 care for people with, whether it's autism or other disabilities, people without alternative care options. In the last year since I've come on board with SAAC, I've spoken to many parents, some of them in their 70s, who are really getting on in age, and they are very, very worried about what's going to happen to their children when they're no longer around. And you know, it's a question that keeps so many of these parents awake at night. And that's where the homes are supposed to come in. The parents themselves have been caregiving for their own children for decades. And what the homes then provide is an option where their children can be cared for in a dignified environment. It won't be the same as living at home with their families, that's for sure. And that's why I agree with Bob. I hope you don't send your son to my home anytime soon and keep your son with you for as long as you can. But when there are no longer any alternatives, then that's where the homes come in, and we want to provide that dignity of life. Because really the alternative for many of these people and adults with autism is that they could be institutionalized. And that's something that I think we want to avoid, and we want to do as much as we can.
Thanks, Bernard, for that sharing. Zui, so Rainbow Centre has been developing a lot of alternate programs that tap heavily into community resources. Can you share with us why the idea, why the change in approach to looking at community?
Okay, just to clarify, it's not many. There's only really just one alternative program. And I think starting with the film that Bob shared, the first one, and that really started the social workers at Rainbow Centre thinking about what's next, because we are the ones who facilitate the whole process of supporting our students and their families into the next process. And at one time, we provided services only up to 12 years old, and that's why they really leave the system really early. As a social worker, I think that there are three things that's really important for us to bring to the whole process of transition. And the three things would be a person-centered approach, an enabling process that empowers our persons with disabilities and their families, and activating communities. And I think those are the experiences that really help us to rethink how we would want to support our families in their journey as they enter the communities, starting with a person-centered approach. And what I mean is really starting with what clients want. One of the most, I would say, frustrating and almost distressing thing as a social worker is offering very limited choices to my clients. And I think it was really hard at one point to be sharing with them, oh, okay, this is what you can do, you can work, and so you can go to these services. And you are not able to work, and hence these are the only services for you. It goes against the values we have as social workers when we want to start with the person. So it's really changing that narrative from what's available in the system to what do you want? What do you want for your life? And isn't that what you and I want as well? That we want to start with thinking about what we want for a good quality of life. And then as service providers, we find the support systems, we find people in the community who can then support our families in this process. I think that's one thing that was very clear in us, that we wanted to have the voices of our students being clearly heard and starting with that voice. And then for us, it's really enabling and hopefully empowering them. And I use this word empowered, and I want to be really careful when I use this, because empowerment really is just about people having control over their own lives. It is not something I can do to empower someone or to give them power. And I think at the moment we think that that's really disempowering. But what I can do is to improve the process in which I work with them and in which I support them. And those are the things that we like to look at. Those are the things that we like to infuse into our programs. The third things that we do is really to connect communities. So when we started this program 5 years ago, it was school to community, because that was the stage that we were thinking about. How do we start our parents and our students thinking about that process earlier, right? And we start that process at 15 years old. And we were just really looking at how we can improve our work. But it was just so amazing. We started that pilot project with 200 families. And the kind of stories that we heard from them, the kind of dreams that we heard from our students just got us so excited. And it then developed into this new program that we have, Connected Communities. And so in this project, as I shared, it's really about changing that narrative from what's available to now, what do you want for your life, and how can we as a community then come in to help you? We have named this service Connected Communities, and in answering your question of what inspired us, I think three things. A, the aspirations of our young adults with disabilities. They have shared with us such amazing stories, and there are many times that we leave the session just amazed by what we do not know about these students who we have taught for like over a decade. It's like we never knew that they were even thinking about such things. And I think that just tells us that when we start with the aspirations, there are just so much more possibilities that we can think about. Second is the belief of our caregivers. I think in Asian context, we are often very scared, or I was very scared to be asking our families, what's your dream for your child? And there were many times where we asked that our caregivers would cry. But we realized that even our caregivers have changed and grown. They have dreams. And us not asking them doesn't mean that they don't have those dreams. And what we have been encouraged by is really that whole belief in our caregivers. A father recently shared that the entire process of what we call the good life journey just helped change the mindsets of his family. And with that change in mindset, it changed the dynamics in the family. There was lesser tension, and then he saw that it improved the well-being of his child. That was really encouraging for us that a family member can see that. And for him, he's now a strong advocate of this good life journey. And he says that parents must want and own this whole process, very similar to, I think, what Bob shared earlier. And the third C is the connectedness of the community. And I think this is where I hope that members in the audience can see your part in it as well. We named this program Connected Communities because that's really the goal. We don't have a center. It is not a service. And I think that's where we often struggle at Rainbow Center to describe what this is about, because people are saying, but it's not a daycare center. It is not this, it is not that. Because it is really neither of that. But it is really about the building of communities. You and I, we all have many different circles of connections. If I can describe it in this way, it is about building that circles of connections for our young adults. You and I have got friends from primary school, secondary school. You have colleagues. We have interest group, different friends. But for our young adults, there are sometimes just two circles of connections for them, and that's just their family and then the social service professionals. And that's what we mean when we say they leave the social service system without a service, and then there's a cliff effect, because there's no other circles of connections. So what we are trying to do at Rainbow is really to build and expand that circles of connections for them. And we know that that's something that must be done in a very deliberate manner, in a very intentional manner. Recently, Meilan just posted in her Facebook post, and I like to share that. Because this is not a new concept, what we are trying to do is really just put resources into this whole effort. And Meilan shared this in her Facebook post about one of her best friends who has journeyed with her. And in Meilan's words, she said this: the road is less lonely when you have friends, and she hopes that every autistic family has such steadfast friends to share their lifelong journey. I think this is what we have for the hope of our young adults and their families as well. They need support to build these friendships, and that's where our connected communities come in. We are providing the support for them to build these friendships, and you can be part of that connected communities.
Thank you for that very passionate expression of why community is so important. And I guess, moving on to Meilan, being part of this, we call it a learning journey, right, for all of us, especially you guys. How would you sum up what you picked up from this experience? And as a parent advocate, right, what do you think can change, in a parent's mindset when planning for the future?
Thank you. Actually, some of the things I wanted to say have been mentioned by Zoe. And maybe because I myself have been trained in sociology, so I tend to look at things a little differently. When I was doing this project, actually, a few things struck me. For example, if we look at the older adults featured in our exhibition, we have Ivan, Benjamin, Stella, Narelle. You look at them and you see, okay, you may only see them as persons who arrive at this stage where they are. But if you examine the factors around them, then you realize that actually they are casualties of an earlier time when SPED stopped at 12 instead of 18. So they like 6 years of what more could have been done. And the result is then we see, I remember when we visited the adult home, and so happened that when we asked for who can be included in the exhibition, so St. Andrew's Home gave us 3 names, Benjamin, Stella, and Narelle. And so happened that these 3 persons are verbal, expressive, and in a way we felt very high functioning because they could self-occupy safely, they engage in art and craft and all that. So we see them as having better potential than our own children, and why are they in homes when they are still so young? You know, they could be somewhere out there, could be working, could even be sheltered workshop or whatsoever. But you know, they were from an earlier time where they already lack what could have been done better to them, and therefore they ended up in this stage. So that's one. And the other thing that disturbed me very greatly is, if you notice the pictures, most of the pictures show these individuals in, okay, I won't say isolation, but they're always like alone. Whether they are working, okay, maybe working is different depending on the setting, but if you think of them, a good group of them actually do not really have interaction with typical peers from when they were being enrolled in early intervention to special schools, and some of them then end up in day activity centers, and lastly in home. It's a very isolating experience, and you can even see from the pictures. And this actually disturbed me very greatly because, like Zui mentioned, we ourselves, we have so many contacts with other people, we have so many friends. And I remember one incident struck me when I was at home, and Stella was very busy, very focused on doing art and craft, and she actually dedicates all these crafts to people she knows. And if you look at the list of people she knows, maybe there are like 20 names. In her whole adult life of like 28 years, she has only 20 names, and maybe most of these names are just care staffs at St. Andrew, and people have cared for her maybe before she enrolled into St. Andrew. And this is like, how can this be? I mean, all of us have such long lists of friends or acquaintance or people we know, and these autistic individuals, even when they're adults, they have literally nobody. So I think this is something that can change if society becomes more embracing, and you know, we find ways to connect to them, like some of the initiatives that Zoe has pointed out. And the other thing is, I also look at, you know, I mean, this whole project itself is like Bob mentioned, it really takes a village. So this whole caring for this autistic community is also takes a village, but our village is very small. Our village is like what Zui again mentioned, family, care professionals, and maybe allies, like some of you here, really allies, people who are already interested in working with the special needs community. But how can we expand this village? You know, it can't be just us all the time. So really, how do we expand their circles of support? And I think we really need to look more into community support. And it's very heartening. At one point during the interview, we interviewed one of the Good Life Befrienders, this program at Rainbow Center. And you know, sometimes as caregivers, we face so much, and then we feel that, oh, we are just all alone, we have to do this, we have to face this alone. But here is a Good Life Befriender. She's a volunteer, she's a medical student, and she's really very busy, but you know, she finds time. And during the interview, she said, you know, all her life she's like living in a bubble of privilege, and her immediate concerns were like stress over academic grades and all that, and that's all. And then she started volunteering and encountering people with various challenges, and she realized that, hey, you know, we have been living in this bubble of privilege, and so now what can we do? You know, that was really very touching for me, because it shows that someone cares. You know, this aspect of someone else cares actually is very important to parents like us. Yeah. And another thing that I picked up from this project is, you know, I don't want to say too much about parent versus parent advocate, because we are first and foremost parents. maybe our mindset is a little different. So I want to say a little bit about what's the difference in the mindset between just a parent and someone with more of a mindset of a parent advocate. So if we look at the stories, some of them like Ashraf, JY, Jin Yi, we look at them and we see, okay, and even Gate Hui and Gate Ting, the pair of sisters, we look at them and we see the involvement of the parents, the intervening hand of the parents, of their parents, how this intervention actually changed the course of the path they would otherwise take. For example, Jin Yi, I remember Mr. Tay told us that at first it was, now Jin Yi is under the animal project that his father set up. At first, Mr. Tay started Professor Brown Cafe, and actually, Jin Yi was not suitable for F&B business. But this is what I mean by the difference between a parent and a parent advocate mindset. If you are a parent, you tend to be very focused on what you can do for your child. But if you have a parent advocate mindset, you tend to look beyond just your child. And when you look beyond just your child, you actually, you are looking beyond the existing options. So actually now the options are very limited. If you look at the educational pathway, I think it's no longer in the MOE website, but it used to be there. And actually, even if it's not there, the pathway, the very limited pathway has not changed. It's either open employment. Maybe now we have like some job coach kind of more, how do I say it? Shadow employment. And then we have sheltered workshop, which actually not really work for ASD so far. And then we have DAC, and we have, of course, staying at home. So among these very limited, very broad options, it looks very broad, but actually very limited opportunities, where would people like Jin Yi and Ashraf fit into? They may not be fitting into where it serves their interests or their abilities the best. So in the end, even though Mr. Tay set out the Professor Brown Cafe, it didn't work out for his son, but he worked out for others. So what I'm trying to say is, if you just focus on what can only work for your child, you actually become, in a way, very narrowly focused. But if you look beyond your child and you set up other options, you're actually expanding the options collectively. If more parents do this collectively, then we have so much more options up there. And what you set up may not be suitable for your child, but you don't know what another parent set up may then be suitable for your child. And then I think we really need this kind of more collaborative kind of mindset to collectively expand the options. Yeah, and same thing for Ashraf. You look at him, if you just look at the picture, oh, he can work, there was one picture of him preparing this and all that. But actually behind the scene, he actually still needs quite a lot of support. And if we are limited to the options that we have now, it will not be very easy for Ashraf to be able to work. It really takes this kind of special environment that his parents have set up for him to be able to start to be able to learn how to slowly adapt to the working environment. So I know that not every parent has the same kind of resources, same kind of energies, and it's actually a lot of sacrifices, like Farah gave up a high-flying career and all that. Not every parent have that, but I think every parent can do something. May not be the same thing, may not be the same big thing. And I think out there, I think the government has come up with also, like through SG Enable, now there are a few initiatives like the MediaCorp Enabling Fund, and even our project is supported by the SG Singapore Fund, our SG Singapore Fund. It's all good and well that we have all these funds, but it's not always about the money, because all these funds require someone to do the work. So we as parents, we are first and foremost as parents. So as parents, we have very limited bandwidth. We are not always able to do so many things, because even when we do the funds and all that, first and foremost, we cannot pay ourselves. We cannot pay ourselves. So you can imagine Bob sacrificing months of unpaid work doing this. It's really it's just community service. And then we have to go through we have to do all the work, and then we have to file all the claims, all the event reporting, all that is a lot of work. So not everybody will want to do that. So in order to still be able to make use of these initiatives and do something, we really need partners, good working partners. And for myself, I've been very fortunate. Is Sherry here? Okay, so recently I'm very fortunate because sometimes even when you have working partners, you need someone on the same wavelength as you. Otherwise, it's very difficult because I'm first and foremost a parent. I really don't have time. I'm a full-time caregiver, and my child has high support needs. But when I find a good working partner, I can, through her, do a lot of things. So recently, we set up this Play-able. It's a toy resource library, and it's actually just basically two of us, and she did most of the work. But, you know, when we set this up as a toy resource library, sometimes people have a lot of expectations that it must be open all days and be open to everybody and all that, but actually we don't have the resources. What I want to say is, through this Play-able, this resource library, right, as a parent with this parent advocate mindset, I can see that it can serve beyond just being a toy library. I see the opportunity of hiring parent youth pairs to oversee the library, for example. So, you know, when we talk about work for autistic youth, it's always F&B, housekeeping, or doing craft works and all that. But, you know, we sometimes need to think about other possibilities, like even gating and gateway. I think it's really ingenious to be able to stick stickers on egg cartons. Even that is a form of work. So anything is possible. So I really hope that parents will have this more open kind of mindset, not just looking at their child alone, but looking beyond that and just generally try to seek and work towards more opportunities for the communities as a whole. And of course, we need support because we really don't have the bandwidth to do everything. And that's where, you know, community partners and organizations can come in and support us so that, you know, we really can make this adult life more meaningful and more productive for autistic adults. And it's not just always about employment, because like what Bernard mentioned, some of them can't work in the open market, can't work in the work definition that we narrowly define. Yeah. Oh yes, and then one more thing I wanted to mention, because later when you walk out, you will be receiving cookies from Crunchy Teeth. So again, this is another initiative, a ground-out initiative by parents, set up by 4 parents. And out of these 4 parents, actually only one child of these 4 parents is working at the enterprise. So this again is an example of, you know, some parents, they just do things not just for their own child, but they see the bigger picture, they see the benefit of going beyond their own child and providing opportunities for others. And, you know, collectively, if we can all adopt this mindset more, I think the future will be a lot better for our children with special needs. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Meilan, for that honest sharing. Maybe can we get a round of applause for the parents, because they really have been, I would say, very courageous in going in depth and full on this journey. Now, we'll just do a quick about 15-20-minute Q&A, and I see many of you guys voting for the questions. So let's just start with the first question. Maybe I'll start with Jason, going back to the idea of work, right? The question is, what is one kind act that the public can do to give affirmation to caregivers, to parents, you know, in terms of supporting their autistic children?
Okay, quite a broad question. Okay, I'm just thinking where in the work environment, where you are co-worker to a maybe person on the spectrum, that person is somebody's child. What we have seen where the co-workers are very embracing towards special needs individuals by having lunch with them, sitting beside them, not feeling afraid, but including them in daily activities, in the office, you know, social environment, is actually very encouraging, because the child will go back and tell the mom. And we've seen this in one of the employers. There was some performance that they had to do, and the co-workers actually helped to bring the dress or the clothes they're supposed to wear, and the costume, and actually helped to bring it back, ensure that it's properly ironed, washed, and give it to them. So such embracing acts, I think, brought a lot of encouragement to the to the parents, knowing that their child is not just working but included, really included in a community, in an environment. Yeah.
Yeah, so it starts from the small things, right? I think sometimes when we think about it, it's almost like you have to start a program, start a community. But I think in the course of our discussion, we really wanted to put it out there that it can start from very little acts, almost like treating a colleague with more respect, spending time having lunch together. I'm going to move on to the second question because I know there's a lot of people interested in this. If there is one thing the public transport operators, many of you out there, can do for the autism community, what would it be? Anyone would like to take the question? One thing our public transport operators can do to support your clients, when they're on public transport, what would it be? Bernard?
Yeah, let me try. Can I just see, there's some folks from SMRT here, is that right? Where are y'all? Oh, hi.
Hi.
Question must have been from you guys. Thanks for the question. The way I answer it is slightly roundabout. I had the privilege of sitting on a committee with some really great folks from National Library Board a year or two ago, and they asked me to be there to provide inputs on what we can do for people with autism to make the libraries more inclusive. And what struck me through those discussions was that what's more important is not the infrastructure, it is the culture. And when we talk about an ecosystem, we are really talking about when something really happens, how people are going to react. So in a library, as on a SMRT train or on a public bus, if a meltdown happens, what's going to happen in that space around? And I think, I'm not sure it's as easy to do on a train or a bus as it is in a library, but I think the best thing we can do is to educate. Because it's not, the infrastructure is only the starting point. You can have an infrastructure. I assume you can't have a quiet room on a bus, right? That's not quite possible. I read that the MRT system is about to experiment with a privileged carriage for people with disabilities. That might be something that might be useful. But more than that, it's really about how the rest of the fellow passengers are going to respond when a meltdown happens. So I see a train or a bus as a wonderful place to educate. Melan said it's not just about awareness. It's not awareness per se, it is education. It is about the way a person reacts when they observe a meltdown in public has to do with their paradigm about what caused that meltdown. And if our paradigm about what caused a meltdown is that this person is being willful and disruptive and just disturbing the peace for everybody, then we would have, I think, the wrong reaction. But if we can educate the commuters to understand that a person with autism goes into the meltdown because they cannot withstand the anxiety that comes from the environment, then they would read the behavior from a very, very different light. So whether it's public transport or any other organization, I mean, for those of you here and you're thinking, how can a corporation and organization really help and make things more inclusive? My advice is start with educating not just your customers, educating first yourselves and your staff. I'm quite sure it's the same for all the other SSAs as well. We always welcome volunteers, come volunteer with us, come really get into the lives of the beneficiaries that we serve. And then from there, as you learn and become more aware of what are the needs of people with autism, then I think you can help us also advocate for the cause as well.
Thanks, Bernard, for sharing. So picking up on this point, I love this question. What is an immediate response that the public can do for someone who might be stimming or struggling in public? Do we cover them with a jacket to promote security or offer a hug? So Melan, would you like to pick up on this? Actually, what can the public do if they want to help but they're unsure how to go about?
I think because each child is different. It's a bit difficult to give a one answer. It also depends on why the child is behaving that way. I think the best thing maybe is to ask the parent, like, would you need help? Because some parents may want to handle this by themselves depending on why the child is behaving this way. And some parents may actually require a helping hand. Yeah, so I would say take the cue from the parent and respect whatever answer that the parent requests.
What about if it's an autistic youth, like by himself in the train or on the bus? Is there a certain way to approach? Say if he looks like he's distressed or needs help, how do we go about doing that?
Okay, let me. I want to,
Yes, you may.
Panel,
You may
I'm
chime
not in
in.
the list, but I want to. I'm controlling the computer. Okay, I would say beside SMRT, you also have Tower Transit here also. So thanks to Jinle was lost, and then we get to know Tower Transit. So well, I think the experience when Jinle was lost that day. When Hui Hui, my wife, drove the car very fast to chase the bus, and then she went up to the bus and then talked to the bus driver. I'm looking for my son. I say, who's your son? Then Hui Hui say, he's autistic. Oh, the boy who talking to himself. Oh, he went down at the Bukit Batok Polyclinic. So when Hui Hui was on the bus, Hui Hui is actually at Teck Whye. It's actually quite far from Bukit Batok already. So I think when we're talking about educating even the staff, I think it's important, especially when things happen. I think the first one before the public acting to anyway, most of the public will say, okay, we are in the MRT station, we are in the bus. I think the person in charge of the station or the bus, they are the one who can make the movement. And Milan started this page, Reunite Missing Child, Children, Reunite Missing Children. Yeah, this website. Edward and me, we are three of us doing this page. So and whenever there are children or kids with ASD or adult went missing, then we'll try to contact the parents, make sure that the information is correct, that what color of T-shirt you wear. Most of the time we need to do a lot of checking, and then actually the first if the MRT or bus operator, we can straight away connect with them. Know that someone missing. Okay, no, because they are always on the road. They can always get to know. And then even media, because I used from media, so most of the time I'll be the one to call the radio stations, because a lot of taxi drivers turn on the radio station to say someone missing. They want to report. It's important. And thanks to safe entry things, and then most of the child when he went missing, they don't go and scan. I don't think the ASD will go missing. It will still go and scan the barcode. And thanks to this, because of the COVID, the recent month less case compared to before. Yeah, I think educate the staff is important. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Maybe let me just ask one more last question. And if anyone would like to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Just let's go down the row. What is one area you wish to see improvement or change in? You know, when you talk about this whole ecosystem of inclusion, supporting people with special needs, caregivers, one thought about something you'd like change. Anyone wants to go first? Like, what do you think can and must change when we talk about better supporting autistic people in our society?
I will start first, and I think it's not easy, but let's change our mindsets first. That many times it is same but different. There's a question on the what's meaningful life. I feel it's the same if we can consider it as they are just like us, persons with dreams, persons with hopes. Then I think we approach it, a person with autism as a human being first. And then we look at, just like any of our friends with quirks and idiosyncrasies, they are also the same. And then we adjust our actions, we adjust the way that we behave. It's just about taking time to understand another friend. I think that's something that can start with every one of us in this room.
Thanks, Zoe. Bernard?
I think what I've come to learn is that inclusion is effortful and inclusion is costly. I don't say that easily because I think, and here I'm speaking as a parent, there are, as Meilan said, we wish and we hope for a day when society is really truly inclusive. And to be truly inclusive means that it is not just about getting people with autism or people with other disabilities to be just like us. That's convenient, because if we are waiting for them to be just like us, they may never fully ever be just like us. So therefore, the rest of us who consider ourselves to be a little bit more typical, we need to understand that in order to be inclusive, we have to expect that our lives are somewhat inconvenienced. We have to expect that there is a price to pay for true inclusion. And I think at the end of the day, it is love that calls us to action. It is a sense of compassion we have for people who may have more needs than us, but need to be accommodated to be within that space that we live in, that calls us to action. So I'm really glad to see all of you all here today, and I speak plainly because I have learned that it is easy to talk about inclusion, but it's really difficult to do inclusion. But nonetheless, there are many out there that have done it, and you know, as parents, as even professionals in the sector, we are truly grateful. We at SAAC we work with many volunteers that come very regularly to interact with our beneficiaries. For that, we are grateful. On Saturday evenings, I take my son down to MacRitchie Reservoir to do canoeing with a bunch of volunteers who've been there, rain or shine, every Saturday. And for that, I'm truly grateful because it's something that my son could not have possibly benefited from if not for this wonderful group of volunteers who are prepared to sacrifice Saturday afternoon every week. And so that's what I hope to see.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, one of the things I come into the autism sector that I learned about autism through the people on the spectrum with autism. They teach me what autism is. And then realize that it's not so much about what they're lacking or how different they are, but really seeing how unique they are. In fact, they are now amongst my colleagues, you know. So I sit with them at lunch, I see them, you know, they are the ones who will greet me every day. I mean, neurotypical colleagues sometimes decide not to greet you if you don't have a good day, but they will greet you every day. So there's a lot of beauty and purity in them that you seek to understand, you seek to appreciate. So I hope it moves from knowing to doing. You can be a co-worker, you can be a sibling, you can be a friend, or even a neighbor, as what Bob has mentioned, or even a community service provider. There are things that you could do. You do have skills that you can contribute. So it's not about charity, about pity. It's really about knowing and then doing something about what you know and making that difference. Yep.
Thank you. And Meilan?
Yeah. So I think one thing I found through my own experience is that when people try too hard to be inclusive, actually it becomes very technical and sometimes trying too hard. Yeah, and I think maybe because then you take one step back. Why do they have to? Why does it have to be this way? And it's because there's not enough awareness and they don't know how, and there's a certain amount of fear. And I think that is really the inhibiting factor, that when you have fear, then a lot of things becomes very scary and you're unsure and all that. So I think if we really just take them as one of us, then you can approach them more naturally. And I see that the most successful inclusive stories in my own personal family is really those who know the least about autism, actually. For example, my next door neighbor, she's just a housewife. She doesn't really know about autism and all that, and yet she is the one who can connect the most naturally and the most effectively with my son, compared to someone who is trying to learn more about autism and all that, and trying too hard. So I think just really be natural. And even the Good Life Befrienders, right, program, I think one good thing is it allows the volunteers to do what they like, what they're comfortable with, instead of you dictating that they must do something with this autistic individual. So I think also in our own exposure with activities, our own, for Jake, his exposure to these activities like what Bernard mentioned, some of these volunteers actually are just doing what they like. For example, we went sailing. So we went sailing with those who are already into sailing. It's doing what they like, and they just kind of invite us along. And then, you know, the, what's this program that they run with the blind? Running hour, yes. So these people are just running. They're just doing what they like, and then they just include some of this. So you just do what you like, what you're comfortable at, and I think that is already in a way, it's a safe platform for you to then include people with special needs.
Thank you. Thanks, Milan. Bob, any closing remarks? Any last words you would like to say?
Yeah. Anything you're talking about change, I think I'm not talking about others, because we Hui and me always think that we shouldn't ask so much. I mean, we should do more. I mean, for ourselves, and I think for any parents with special needs, don't always wait for help or wait for someone to come to you. I 我家里很惨哦, I need靠背 and then this and that. But I think it's more important that sometimes before you go and tell us for help on this, you get involved. If you want to get anything, we always heard a lot of stories. Even these few days that we've been showing them, that receiving a lot of message from different people, different parents, saying that, can you please come and visit me? Can you please come and feature me? I'm this, I'm that. I think as a parents, first, I think you need to change. I think as a parents, you need to get involved with your son and your child, or your daughter or son. I think get involved in their life and enjoy their life. That is important. Like I also shared recently, is like if one day suddenly Jin become a neurotypical kid, I might not know how to handle him. We are very too involved and then to enjoy his life already. Yeah, I think that's important also.
Thank you very, very much to everyone for your sharing. I think to just close up, also would like to thank you guys for involving me in this project. It's been a really rich learning journey. For many of you guys here who are community partners, I think really the takeaway from today is that inclusion is not all talk and chat and social media. Like, we really need to deliberately act on it. So maybe as you reflect on this afternoon session, we hope that you've taken away something useful from this afternoon's panel. Could you join me to give these awesome people a round of applause? And thank you very much for your support as well. So I think we would love to invite everyone to move on to view the exhibition at the tunnel. But let me please just hand it over to Xiao Hui from Esplanade to guide us.
Okay, thank you so much, Jean. Thank you to all our panelists as well, and to Bob and to Jean. We hope that you enjoyed today's program. I think, like, everyone has shared, I mean, there's so much to take away from this, and I think the conversation doesn't stop here. I think it continues. At Esplanade, I think it's really been our utmost honor and pleasure to work with Bob to pull this together. I learned so much from it. I think it really is just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, so the exhibition opened last Friday and it runs all the way till 4th of July. It is at the tunnel, which is actually just next to the car park, so you can just head 2 floors down. We also have some exhibitions around the center. If you have the time to do so, please join us. We'd love to have you check out other exhibitions. I would also like to take this opportunity to share a bit more about Crunchy Teeth, which was mentioned just now earlier. So as you make your way out, you can pick up a box of cookies that's prepared by them. Crunchy Teeth is a grounds-up inclusive project that makes and sells baked goods. They train and employ autistic youth and adults and equip them with basic baking skills so they're empowered to seek employment, enjoy independence, and actively participate in society. You can also find out more about what they do on their Facebook page, so do lend them their support. Just one more thing before we part. Finding What's Next is more than just the exhibition itself. There's also a website, so you can check out the website, find out more about the stories of the individuals that are featured in the exhibition. It's at findingwhatsnext.sg. Yeah. So with this, we'll conclude. Once more, thank you everyone for your patience and for your kind attention throughout this. We hope that you have a good week ahead. Thank you.